organizers, welcome to this video with Valiente. We're going to do a bit of a tarp update. I've worked with him a couple more times with the tarp now, kind of progressing from the last video that you guys saw. He's definitely not 100% with it where I'd like him to be in terms of like I'm not ready to pull up the tarp and put him over, like put it all over him and stuff like that yet, but he's definitely made a lot of progress. I just wanted to show you guys where he's at kind of using this approach, and I'm pretty happy because right now Alicia is over there galloping back and forth because Fairley's out eating her grain. So there's kind of stress in the air and kind of an energy that's a little bit more up. And then it's actually not that cold of a day, but I've got my ear warmer on just because I find I get headaches when there's a bit of a cool breeze going through my ears. I don't know, I'm just kind of weird and sensitive with that. So if you're wondering why I've got a headband on, that's why. It's not actually that cold. But there's just a little bit of a cool breeze. So anyways, let's take a look at Mr. Valiente and where he's at with his tarp. So first up, I just have to show you these adorable cows that have these birds that just hang out with them. It's really kind of funny and interesting. I guess the birds eat the different bugs off of the cows, but yeah, they just totally hang out together. Super cute. All right, so here's Valiente, and I'm going to show you a bunch of the stuff that we've been working on and where he's at. So one of the things is that we work on the tarp and then we do it again, and it almost seems like it's scary again because he hasn't seen it. So it's definitely a lot better. That was his first time going over the tarp this particular day, and you can see it didn't take him long before he could go over it. And there you can see it kind of caught his back foot a little bit, so it startled him for a second. And I always allow him to just cross the tarp. I never trap him on the tarp. Notice the slack in my rope. And when he really walks across it like that, that's when I'm going to offer most of the rewards. And now I'm using his little food dish just because I usually feed my horses their grain, and their grain is mixed with omega-3 oil as well as vitamin E oil, and so it's too gross to put in my treat pouch and give, and I didn't have time to both feed him and give him like a training session. So I thought, well, let's like feed you and do a training session at the same time. So that's why I've got the little bucket of grain with me rather than just giving him cookies out of my pouch like I normally do. So basically what I wanted to show you guys in this little segment is how we'll kind of do the tarp. And he's a little bit unsure of it at first. He walks over it, he gets calm, all is good. And that now we're working on a little bit of our handling skills that we're going to need for the Mustang challenge. So we're doing a little move the hips, little scratches. We're going to do a little bit of switching sides, a little bit of sideways. So these are all skills that we're going to need for the handling skills. And really what I'm doing is just giving Valiente a mental disconnection from the tarp for a minute, doing the shoulders the other way. So we're turning away from the tarp, kind of towards the tarp again. And then now we're going to go approach the tarp again. And what's interesting is how I'm just picking up the bucket of food there. He's like, okay, I got to run across it again. It's like, really? Like you literally just did it like 30 seconds ago and got calm and relaxed with it. It hasn't even changed shape. And he's like, no, it's scary again. So we kind of do the same thing and we walk across it. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't have to be spooky. So what I did that second time is I withheld the food until he walked across it calmly. And then I gave him some bite, like a bite of food. And then to earn more bites of food, he has to have his front feet on the tarp. So then after he's calm and relaxed with it again, we leave, and you can kind of see him almost like look at the bucket of food and be like, wait a second, I didn't want to leave the bucket of food. And that's kind of the second part of the strategy that I'm using with him is now we're leaving again. So for that way, we're going to get to a practice approaching the tarp again, because I can get him confident with the tarp, but it's about reapproaching the tarp. That's a new thing. So I'm just doing some other things with him again that are part of the normal handling skills that we're going to have to do. And then now we get to practice reapproaching the tarp. And notice how he didn't get any food or treats for doing the normal handling skills. All of the food is going to be related to this tarp. So I'm trying to get him to be like, not only does he just tolerate the tarp, but I actually want him to be a little bit excited to see the tarp and be like, oh yeah, we're going back to the tarp. The tarp means food. So now that he's good with his basic handling skills and I can walk around him, I can move his shoulders and stuff, he doesn't need rewards for those things anymore. So instead I can up the level of difficulty, but the tarp is still challenging for him. So he gets rewards for doing the tarp. So one of the things that I notice with him is that a lot of his anxiety has to do with his back feet on the tarp and also with the tarp changing. So we're going to work on those two separate things. So the first thing we're going to do is now change the shape of the tarp. So I've kind of changed the pylons around. I'm opening up the tarp a little bit more. You can see he's skeptical of what I'm doing. He's kind of going into that braced position. So he's not 100% confident with the tarp. He's significantly better than what he used to be, but he's still like not best friends with the tarp. So you can see I changed the pattern and he knew that he needed to cross it, but he did it fast and rushed. And so there he was about to do it super rushed. So I kind of blocked him for a second and then asked him to cross again. And what I'm waiting for is for him to do it nice and relaxed. So I'm withholding the food from him. He's definitely not in trouble. You can see the total slack in the line. I'm giving him verbal praise and telling him he's doing a good job, but he's not going to earn the food until there when he does it nice and relaxed, walking, not rushing. And I give him just one bite of food so that way he gets some reward. And then I'm going to ask him to do it again. And ideally, I want him to be able to pause with his feet on the tarp. So I'm using the food as a reward, not a bribe. You can actually see Alicia running in the background there. She just came into view. But you can see that I'm trying to give him rewards for doing the right thing. Here's just a little look at Alicia running around like an idiot in the background. I know I shouldn't call her an idiot. I'm just being silly. Look at her playing around. So that's just her being like, hey, you've got a Valiente out and you've got Fairly out because Fairly's at the trailer eating her grain. So she was a little bit unhappy to be in there by herself. So anyways, back to Mr. Valiente and the tarp and just showing you sometimes I put the food on the ground for him to eat because it gets him to lower his head. And I'm just trying to cause lots of positive association. But what I'm not doing is holding the bucket in front of him like a bribe and saying, follow the cookies over the tarp. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to establish a pattern of if you try and you're doing a good job, then I'm going to offer you rewards. But it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the food every time you cross the tarp. I'm raising the level of difficulty, which is important to keep making progress with what you're doing. So I'm just kind of rubbing him while he's eating his food and hanging out with him. So sometimes we just kind of hang out on the tarp and he gets to eat his num-nums. And then sometimes we're doing more active work around the tarp. So you can see I'm just practice rubbing him on his body and he gets a little bit, hey, what are you doing? And that's just because when you're in a state of kind of tension or anxiety, then other things that don't necessarily bother you all of a sudden start to bother you. And so that's why sometimes people go to shows or they go on trail rides and things like that, and their horse is experiencing a higher level of stress. And then things that typically don't bother them start to make them get upset. The same way that normally I can rub him and I can walk around him. But because now the tarp is there, he's kind of like, oh, what's going on with this rope? What's going on? You're rubbing me at my hip. And so I'm just kind of reassuring him like, hey, it's not going to hurt you. And just kind of sticking with it and being patient until he can be confident to have his little num-nums there. So then here, when he's getting a little bit too spooky at the tarp, I just kind of pick up the food and we're going to walk over it again. I find if they get too tense, then it's good to ask them to move and it helps to release a little bit of that tension. And then I'll try again there with offering him his food and he's more confident there. So I just wanted to show you this little clip. This is kind of cool because the tarp is going to catch the wind in a second. And we all know what has happened in the past with Valiente and the tarp when it's caught the wind. And I haven't been able to hold on to the rope. But there, look at that. The tarp caught some wind and it ruffled a little bit, which they weren't big ruffles. But then again, he's pulled the rope out of my hands before from not big ruffles. And then you can see I'm just like, okay, you can walk over it. Even though it's changed shape, you can still walk over it. And he did much better. Like he's doing so much better with that kind of work. So you can see I'm kind of stomping around on the tarp too. I try not to be too careful about what I'm doing now with my feet. And so then we just work on crossing the tarp in different ways. So now he's going between the pylons from the end of the tarp. And I try to ask him to kind of go nice and slowly by using my body language and my voice and trying to get him to stop with his back feet on the tarp. But you can see that's hard for him. When he stops with his back feet on the tarp, he's not super confident with that. He still feels the needs to kind of rush off. So you can see he does it again. He's like, I'm still on the tarp. It's like, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I know somebody mentioned, you guys were talking about depth perception. I don't know if he has an issue with depth perception. I know that horses are not as confident with things around their hind legs and that they have to raise and lower their head to be able to focus on different things. Once I start on bridge work, I think it will be a little bit easier to tell if he has trouble, but he has walked across some bridges before and didn't necessarily notice an issue. So it will be easier to tell once we get some more confidence happening and we work more on stepping up and stepping down over things, and then we'll have a little bit better idea. I'm not sure if, I know the vet can tell if there's something like an ulcer or something like that in the horse's eye, but I don't know if they could tell if, like, let's say he would need glasses, although I don't think horsey glasses exist, but not really sure about that. So I just wanted to show you a little bit more of working now on trying to progress to walk across the long way of the tarp. And now this is harder for him because his back legs are going to have to be on the tarp for a longer period of time. So he's not super convinced that this is a good idea, but he's not putting up a big fight or anything like that. He's not trying to rear up and pull out of my hands like he used to in the past. Still not super confident. But anyways, we work on it with gentle repetition and giving him rewards when he's doing it well. And then you can see he's starting to get it. It's pretty exciting. Still a little tense in his body, and you can see he rushes off the tarp. It's not his favorite thing in the world, but we're slowly changing his perception. He's starting to realize that it can be a pretty good thing, or at least not a bad thing anyways. Lots of rewards involved. And you can see he still tries to rush, and I just politely block him a little bit, kind of say, no, like try to slow down a little bit. So he's doing really, really well. And we're getting to the end of his dinner bowl. So I have to be careful about how much I ask for because I want to make sure that we end on a good note. So this is looking really nice here. He walks across, he doesn't rush over the tarp, even stops with his back feet still kind of touching the tarp. So I rub him, giving him his dinner there. I'm pretty happy with that. We're almost out of dinner. And so I'm like, okay, let's just try another one here. You're doing fantastic. And let's try to actually stop fully on the tarp. And woohoo! We're finally making some serious progress with this tarp. I'm feeling really good about this. Sometimes things can seem like they're taking forever, and so I think it's just important to kind of see, like, look, you can make progress in a positive way. You don't have to get mad at your horse. It can get better with patience. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys.